is a collaboration of multiple data companies as well as universities to come together and create the biggest egocentric data set that is currently available outside. I would say, as far as going here, we want to go into why egocentric data matters. So we know there's two forms to train robots. One is static operation, and the other is egocentric data. Why egocentric data currently works and why it's been doing people time over time again is because of the scale of the data. We've seen with scaling laws that's as it returns, if not millions of hours, the robots start to get better and better. And there have been both theoretical as well as practical, I would say, outcomes that have come up pretty clear.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to add, like, how many people know what egocentric data is? Okay, maybe like half of the room. Yeah, so just like a brief overview. So like egocentric essentially means like first person view. So usually like you have a camera on the top of your head and it's recording yourself with just your hands doing work, or what we call dexterous manipulation. And really this is sort of the frontier of where physical AI development is happening today, where the old paradigm was people using robots to collect data. The problem with that is that robots are pretty expensive, and also you need a human pilot to drive robots. So like usually it involves somebody with like a VR headset or like some sort of controller to drive the robot. And so the sort of shift in the paradigm is like if you have somebody just strapped with a camera or an iPhone on top of their head, like you don't need to teach them how to do work. They know how their hands work. And you just do stuff in the real world, and that is essentially like an unlock where you can do that for billions of people, collect billions of hours, and use that as some sort of internet pre-training for foundation models, which is kind of analogous to LLM pre-training, but there's obviously not enough physical AI data in the world. And so a lot of frontier model companies are transitioning into this phase where they want to use egocentric data in their pre-training mix. They'll do a fine-tuning layer on a robot themselves, but maybe like 10 or 20 demos of like a robot picking up a cup, for example, or you can see people like for millions of hours picking up random cups to use again as contextual learning for foundation models. So just some context for you guys.
Yeah. So it's basically like three questions which we are trying to answer and understand of like what kind of egocentric data do we need. And also, when we collect in like billions and like in millions of scale of egocentric data, like what data is good for robot training? Because we are doing co-training with the egocentric data and the fine-tune, the teleoperation collection, right? So we need to be able to choose what kind of data from the egocentric data is good in order for the co-training to work better. We cannot just dump all the data and tell the model to learn from it. Like more data is not always good data. So we should be able to pick the good one. We should be able to pick the diverse set of data so that it has diversity across all different tasks and it is able to generalize to different kind of approaches. So that's like a major problem as to why we can collect all the data, but selecting the data is also a major concern. So we will be having 3 tracks, and the first track would be majorly on the curation side of where you curate the data in the form of how you select it, and you take care of the sample, like how do you sample the data in order to feed it to the model. And you go ahead with, we have like few examples and like a goal of like what we want to do with that. So it's like we need a pipeline which is able to filter the data set. And like it has to be, it could be like within, it could be on episode level, or it could be also on like within the episode of like which frames you give it. So it could be anything. It's like pretty open like that.
So yeah, thank you for going with the curation engine. The other stuff that we also want to go over is diversity. As we all know, the data set is only as meaningful as the subset it represents. Currently, like everyone's rushing towards this objective North Star of what is good data and how do we define good data. And I think like a lot of teams currently are relying on brute force attempts of just using all the metadata that's available, throwing it into an LM and asking like, hey, is this good? So what we're trying to do here is kind of figure out a clever way, maybe like a novel way, to figure out if the data that we're ingesting into these foundation models is actually good, or if there's two subsets of data, which one of them has more meaningful impact on the final foundation model.
Yeah. And the other one is once you curate the data and once you do all of like getting the data set that you want, when you try to run it on the robot, there will still be few failure cases and like successes. So how would you go on about like identifying those failure cases earlier rather than making the robot do it and then you understand it? So there's a trick to it of like where you can make the failure cases your training data again. So once the failure case happens, you can use that, you can preempt it, and then you can guide the robot, or like you can use that kind of data in order to like retrain it again instead of it just failing through. So the third track will be focusing on that, like what kind of methods or what kind of approaches would we be using to identify those failure cases.
Also, just to go a bit of what data set we're going to be using, this is a public repository right now called the Egoverse. This will have about a few hundred to a few thousand hours of ego-centric data that you can use. There's computer vision annotations, so 21 hidden key points, as well as text segment level annotations. So about 5 to 10 seconds, the text itself will describe what is happening inside of the video, along with other like metadata that you may find. So that's what we're going to be primarily using as the source of the data sets. We're going to be, as we said, we're going to be a maximum of 4 people. You can pick any language stack I think that you may want, as long as it works. It's fine. Judging is super straightforward and simple. We're just looking for something that actually makes a difference, moves the needle. We want to make sure that it's defensible and it actually works in the real life, not just theoretical. We're kind of late on the kickoff, but we're going to be starting to go at 10 a.m., so 7 minutes. Lunch is at 12:30. Submissions we close them at 4:45. We're going to be starting the demo at 5, 650 awards, and then we're going to have dinner at 7 p.m. Modal has very graciously sponsored us like with $300 of credit, so please scan this QR code. Shout out to Manish here. Feel free to start with Modal and 11 hours.
Cool. Yeah, just to re-emphasize, if you search up Egoverse on Google, the first repository that comes up, that should be the one. But yeah, you can copy that URL as well, or come up to us. And then you should have the 3 tracks as well, but if not, we'll leave it up on the screen afterwards. Again, for those of you who have the email for 11 Labs, then you'll have the credits, but if you don't have it, then you'll have to wait. And then yeah, the model credits will be accessible on the screen as well. And yeah, if you have any questions, please come talk to us. Otherwise, happy hunting. We'll send out the Google Forms at 12:30 for your team submission, or sorry, just your team, and then an actual like project submission closer to 4.